The wine glass trembled in my hand as the words left my son's mouth. I watched him across the dining table, my only child, the boy I'd carried for 9 months, raised for 32 years, and heard him say, "You're not even half the woman my mother-in-law is." Dashiell was looking directly at me. Those blue eyes, so heartbreakingly identical to his father's, held something I never imagined I'd see there. Contempt. Pure, unfiltered contempt for the woman who'd given him life. Estelle, my daughter-in-law, smiled. Not the embarrassed, apologetic smile of someone witnessing an uncomfortable moment. This was different. This was triumph. Her perfectly manicured hand, those gel nails that cost more than a week's groceries for most families, rested on Dashiell's arm, and she smiled like she'd just won something precious. I felt the room tilt slightly. Or maybe it was me. 28 years I'd spent building a medical technology empire from nothing. I started as a night shift nurse at County General, taking classes during lunch breaks, studying while other people slept. I got my MBA one evening course at a time over 6 years, founded my company at 35, with $50,000 I'd saved dollar by dollar, working doubles and triples until my feet bled in my nursing shoes. Sold that company 3 years ago for $45 million. And here I sat, being compared unfavorably to Dominique Duchamp, a woman who'd never worked a day in her life, who'd lost everything her family had through bad investments and poor decisions, and now lived off appearances in a rented apartment in Nice that her daughter probably paid for. My hands found the arms of the chair, the mahogany chair that Robert and I had picked out together 15 years ago when we'd finally furnished this dining room the way we'd always dreamed. Robert, my husband, my partner, gone 3 years now, taken by a heart attack at 61 while he was still at the top of his game as a cardiovascular surgeon. I pushed the chair back. The sound filled the silence that had fallen over the table. Estelle's smile flickered just slightly. Dashiell's expression shifted. I saw a flash of something that might have been regret, or maybe just fear. "Then she can pay for your Ferrari from now on," I said. My voice came out calmer than I felt, steadier. "And the penthouse, and the credit cards, and the restaurants, and the clothes, and everything else I've been financing for the past 2 years. The color drained from Estelle's face. It started at her hairline, those perfectly highlighted chestnut waves with the caramel balayage that cost $800 a month to maintain, and spread downward until even her carefully contoured cheeks looked pale beneath the makeup. "What are you talking about?" Her accent, usually so carefully cultivated to sound elegant and European, suddenly sounded shrill. "What rental?" I looked at my son, really looked at him. Saw the boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard, calling them flowers. Saw the teenager who'd been so proud when he got into law school, even though we all knew it was more about connections than grades. Saw the man who'd stood next to me at his father's funeral, holding my hand while we lowered Robert into the ground. "Tell her, Dashiell," I said quietly. "Tell your wife who really pays for her lifestyle." He'd gone pale too. His hand, the one that Estelle had been touching so possessively, now gripped his wine glass like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "Mom, The Ferrari," I continued, not letting him finish, "is registered in my name. You drive it. But technically, you rent it from me for $4,200 a month, a payment you've never actually made." Estelle's eyes widened. She looked at Dashiell, then back at me, then at Dashiell again. "That's not—" "He told me he bought the penthouse in Century City," I said, my voice still that same eerie calm. I felt like I was watching myself from somewhere outside my body, watching this woman I'd become say things I'd been thinking for months, but never had the courage to voice. 800 square meters, panoramic views, the one you post about constantly on Instagram, calling it our dream home. I own it. $8,500 a month I've been paying since you moved in." "No," Estelle whispered, but there was no conviction in it. I could see her mind working, see her adding up numbers, see the truth settling over her like a heavy blanket. "The credit cards," I continued. I was on a roll now, and some part of me knew that if I stopped, I might not be able to start again. "All linked to my accounts. I've been getting the statements. Last month alone, $23,000. The month before, $27,000, Restaurants, clothes, that spa weekend in Ojai, the new handbag collection, the Chanel dress you're wearing right now. $3,800, charged 4 days ago. Estelle's hand went to the fabric of her dress, like she could feel the price tag burning through the material. And let's not forget the supplemental income, I said, looking at Dashiell now. The $10,000 I deposit into your account every month, on top of paying all your bills, all your expenses, everything. My son had tears in his eyes, actual tears. Mom, please, your father and I built something real, I said, and I heard my voice crack for the first time. Felt the emotions I'd been holding back start to push through. We worked ourselves to the bone. I missed your school plays because I was in night classes. I missed your soccer games because I was pitching to investors. Your father missed dinner after dinner because he was in surgery, saving lives. And we did it so you'd have opportunities we never had. I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but I made myself stay upright. Made myself maintain the dignity that Robert had always said was my greatest strength. But we never wanted you to need us like this, I continued. We wanted you to be strong, independent. We wanted you to build something of your own, even if it was smaller than what we built. We wanted you to be proud of yourself. Dashiell was crying openly now. I am proud. You just compared me to a woman who lives off the generosity of others, I said, and I felt the anger finally breaking through the calm. A woman who's never worked a day in her life. A woman who raised a daughter who sees marriage as a business transaction. And you did it in my house, at my table. After eating food I prepared with my own hands, because I had to stop, had to breathe, because I wanted us to feel like a family again. Marlo, Estelle started, and the use of my first name, so casual and disrespectful, felt like a slap. Mrs. Hollister, I corrected, or nothing at all. We're past the point of casual familiarity. She flinched, actually flinched, and I felt a small, bitter satisfaction at that. I need to understand, Estelle said, and her voice had taken on a different quality now. Desperate, calculating. I could almost see her brain working, trying to figure out how to salvage this. Dashiell told me he had a trust fund. He told me his father left millions. He told me, Robert left a $2 million life insurance policy, I said. Half went to medical charities in his name, as he requested in his will. The other half is in a trust for Dashiell. $50,000 a year until he turns 52. That's gradual release over 20 years. I watched Estelle do the math, watched her face change as she realized what this meant. $50,000 a year from the trust. Plus, Dashiell's salary as an associate attorney, $140,000 a year before taxes. Even combined, that wasn't close to the $400,000 plus they'd been spending annually. You lied to me, Estelle said, turning to Dashiell. Her voice was rising now, losing that carefully cultivated elegance. You lied about everything. The car, the house, the money. Everything was her? All of it? I was going to tell you, Dashiell started, but she cut him off. When? When were you going to tell me? After I'd wasted more years on you? After I'd... She stopped herself, but I heard what she didn't say. After I'd wasted my youth on someone who couldn't provide the lifestyle I wanted. Get out of my house, I said quietly. They both looked at me. I said, get out. My voice was stronger now. Both of you, now. Mom, we need to talk about this. Dashiell tried, but I shook my head. We're past talking. You have 30 days to vacate the penthouse. I'll be contacting my lawyer tomorrow to begin the eviction process formally, but I'm giving you this courtesy notice now. The Ferrari needs to be back in my garage by tomorrow afternoon. All the credit cards are canceled as of this moment. I'll be calling the banks first thing in the morning. The supplemental deposits end today. You can't, Estelle started, but I held up my hand. I absolutely can. The penthouse is in my name. The car is in my name. The credit cards are in my name. All of it. Every single thing you've been enjoying for the past 2 years has been mine, generously given, and now generously revoked. I moved toward the doorway, needing to put distance between us before I said something I couldn't take back, before I broke down completely, before they saw just how much this was destroying me. Marlo, please. Dashiell's voice cracked on my name, and I heard Robert in it, heard the husband I'd loved with everything in me, heard the man who'd stood beside me through every struggle, every triumph, every moment of our 28 years together. And that's what made me turn back. That's what made me look at my son one last time. Your father would be ashamed, I said softly. Not because you needed help. Everyone needs help sometimes. But because you lied. Because you built your entire marriage on a foundation of lies and pretense. Because you let this woman believe you were something you're not, and then you let her disrespect me, the woman who gave you everything, in my own home. The words hung in the air between us. I saw them land, saw Dashiell's face crumble, saw Estelle's expression shift from anger to something that looked almost like fear. 30 days, I repeated. And then I want every key, every garage remote, every access card. I want you completely out of my properties and out of my financial life. What you do after that is your decision, but you'll do it on your own money, with your own resources, like an adult. I walked out of the dining room, out through the foyer, up the stairs to the master bedroom, the room I'd shared with Robert, the room where I'd spent countless sleepless nights since he died, reaching for him in the darkness and finding only empty space. I closed the door and locked it, sat down on the edge of the bed, and finally let myself cry. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the bed I'd shared with Robert for 28 years, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of Dashiell and Estelle leaving, car doors slamming, the Ferrari's engine roaring to life in a way that felt deliberately aggressive, tires squealing as they pulled out of the driveway, my house, everything mine, and yet somehow I was the one who felt like I'd lost something. The sun was coming up when I finally gave up on sleep and went downstairs. The dining room was exactly as we'd left it, 3 place settings, food gone cold on the plates, my wine glass still sitting where I'd abandoned it, a dark red ring staining the white tablecloth. I looked at that stain for a long moment, thinking about how some things can't be cleaned, how some damage is permanent. I started clearing the table, needing something to do with my hands, needing to feel normal, even though nothing would ever be normal again. And as I scraped untouched food into the trash, I let myself remember how we'd gotten here, how I'd let this happen. Robert died on a Tuesday. I remember that detail with crystal clarity. It was a Tuesday in March, one of those perfect Southern California days where the sky is impossibly blue and the air smells like jasmine. He'd gone to the hospital at 5 a.m. for a scheduled surgery, a routine bypass. He'd done hundreds of them. He called me at 7:30, like he always did, to say good morning and tell me he loved me. By 9:15, his partner was calling to tell me Robert had collapsed in the OR. Massive heart attack. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The cardiovascular surgeon, taken by his own heart. Dashiell had been 29 then, living in a modest apartment in Westwood, working as a junior associate at a mid-tier law firm, dating casually, but nothing serious. He fell apart at the funeral, completely fell apart, and I held it together. I had to. Someone had to make the decisions, handle the arrangements, deal with the endless paperwork that comes with death. I held it together for both of us. But after the funeral, after the memorial service, after all the casseroles and condolence cards and well-meaning visits from people who didn't know what to say, I fell apart too. I'd sold my company 6 months before Robert died. We'd planned it that way. We were going to travel. We were going to finally have time together, uninterrupted time, without surgeries or board meetings or phone calls at 3 a.m. We were going to be 55 and free, with decades ahead of us. Instead, I was 54 and alone. Utterly, devastatingly alone. Dashiell started coming over more, staying for dinner, sleeping in his old room some nights because, he said, his apartment felt too empty. And I welcomed it. God help me. I welcomed it. I needed someone to need me. I needed to feel like I still had purpose. That's when the money started. Small things at first. His car broke down, a 12-year-old Honda that had seen better days, and I offered to help with repairs. But then I thought, why repairs? Why not just buy him something reliable? So I did. A BMW. Nothing too flashy, I told myself. Just something safe and appropriate for a young attorney. Then it was help with rent. His apartment lease was up, and I suggested he move somewhere nicer, somewhere in a better neighborhood. I'd cover the difference between his old rent and the new place, just until he made partner, I said. Just temporary. But it never stayed temporary. It never stayed small. I met Estelle about 6 months after Robert died. Dashiell brought her to Sunday brunch, something we'd started doing weekly, trying to maintain some sense of family routine. She was beautiful in that effortless way that only 26-year-old women can be. Long hair that caught the light, a smile that showed perfect white teeth, a French accent that made everything she said sound elegant. "She's a content creator," Dashiell told me, his face lit up with pride. "She has almost 300,000 followers on Instagram. Companies send her products to review. She gets invited to exclusive events." What he didn't say, what I learned later, was that content creator meant she posted pictures of herself in expensive clothes at expensive places, creating the illusion of a lifestyle she couldn't actually afford. The products companies sent her were payment, not gifts. The exclusive events were work, not pleasure. She was selling a fantasy to hundreds of thousands of women who wanted to live like her. I should have seen it then. Should have recognized the calculation in the way she asked questions about my career, my business, my beautiful home. Should have noticed how her eyes lingered on my jewelry, my car, the artwork in my entryway. Should have paid attention to the way she touched Dashiell, possessively, proudly, like he was a prize she'd won. But I was lonely, and she was charming. And Dashiell seemed happy for the first time since his father died. They got engaged 4 months later. Fast, everyone said. Too fast. My friend Margaret, a cardiologist who'd known Robert and worked with him for 15 years, pulled me aside at the engagement party. "Are you sure about this girl?" Margaret asked, her voice low. "There's something about her that feels, I don't know, calculated." "She makes him happy," I said. "After everything we've been through, don't we deserve some happiness?" Margaret had looked at me with such sadness in her eyes. "Marlo, she makes him feel important. That's not the same thing as happy." But I didn't listen. I wanted to believe in the fairy tale. Wanted to believe that my son had found love, real love, the kind of love Robert and I had shared. So when Estelle started planning the wedding, I offered to help. The budget started at $50,000, then it was $75,000, then $100,000, then $150,000. By the time we sent out invitations, we were at $200,000. The final bill came to $328,000. $328,000 for one day, for a ceremony at a cliffside venue in Malibu, for flowers flown in from Ecuador, for a dress that cost more than I'd earned in my entire first year as a nurse. And I paid for all of it. Every single dollar. "It's an investment in their future," I told Margaret when she questioned it. "It's what Robert would have wanted." "Robert would have wanted Dashiell to stand on his own 2 feet, Margaret said bluntly. "You're not helping him, Marlo. You're crippling him." But I couldn't hear it, didn't want to hear it, because helping Dashiell, giving him things, making his life easier, was the only thing that made me feel less alone. The wedding was beautiful. I have to admit that. Estelle looked like a princess in her Vera Wang gown. Dashiell looked handsome in his custom tuxedo. They said their vows as the sun set over the Pacific, and everyone cried, including me. I cried because they looked so happy. I cried because Robert wasn't there to walk our son down the aisle. We'd adapted the tradition, had Dashiell walk himself. I cried because, for a few hours, I let myself believe that everything was going to be okay. The penthouse came next. They'd been living in Dashiell's apartment, the one I'd been subsidizing, and Estelle kept dropping hints about how small it was, how they needed more space, how all her friends had proper homes. So I bought the penthouse, 800 square meters in Century City. Views of the entire Los Angeles basin, 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a chef's kitchen that I knew neither of them would ever use for actual cooking. I told myself it was a wedding gift, an investment property that they could live in. But the truth was simpler and more pathetic. I was buying my way into their lives, buying Sunday dinners that Estelle would show up too late, buying phone calls where Dashiell would thank me distractedly while she called to him in the background. Buying the illusion that I still had a family. The Ferrari happened about a year into their marriage. Dashiell had been dropping hints about wanting something more appropriate for client meetings. His BMW was only 3 years old, but apparently it wasn't impressive enough. So I bought the Ferrari, $340,000. Put it in my name for insurance purposes, I told myself. But really, it was because some part of me, some small, still rational part, knew this was wrong. Knew I needed to maintain some control. I started noticing other things around that time. The credit card statements that kept getting higher. The way Estelle never seemed to work despite calling herself an influencer. The posts on her Instagram showing designer bags, expensive dinners, first-class flights to destinations I'd never heard them mention planning. And every time I asked Dashiell about it, he'd brush me off. "We're doing fine, Mom. Don't worry about it." But I did worry. And 3 weeks before that dinner, 3 weeks before everything exploded, I'd gotten a call from my bank. Dashiell had tried to take out a personal loan, $250,000, using my house as collateral. He'd forged my signature on the application. The bank manager, Tom, had known me for 15 years. He called me directly instead of processing it. "I just wanted to confirm this was legitimate, Mrs. Hollister. The signature looked a little off." I told him to reject it, told him I'd handle it with my son privately. And then I'd called Dashiell. He'd cried on the phone. Actually cried. Said he was sorry, said he'd panicked, said Estelle wanted to renovate the penthouse and he didn't know how to tell her we couldn't afford it. We, as if they'd ever paid for anything themselves. "How much does she know?" I'd asked. There was a long pause. Too long. "She thinks I make about $500,000 a year." 500,000, when he actually made 140, when everything else, every single other dollar, came from me. I should have confronted them both then. Should have ended it right there. But instead I'd said, "We need to have a serious conversation about this." And I'd planned that dinner, that final dinner, thinking somehow I could make them understand, make them see reason, make them appreciate what they had, instead of always wanting more. I never imagined my own son would compare me to Dominique Duchamp in my own house. The first week after the dinner was silent, completely, utterly silent. No calls, no texts, no apologetic emails or attempts at explanation. Nothing. I moved through my house like a ghost, finding traces of them everywhere. A photo from their wedding on the mantel, Dashiell's baby shoes that I'd kept in a shadow box, the Mother's Day card he'd given me 2 years ago with "To the Best Mom" printed in gold letters, a generic card he'd clearly grabbed last minute, but I'd treasured it anyway. I took them all down, packed them in boxes, and carried them to the garage. I couldn't throw them away. They were still pieces of my son, pieces of my life, but I couldn't look at them anymore either. Margaret called on day 3. "I heard," she said simply. "I'm coming over." She arrived with Thai food and a bottle of expensive red wine. We sat in my kitchen, the kitchen where I'd prepared that disastrous dinner, and I told her everything. The loan attempt I'd never mentioned before, the full extent of the money I'd been giving them, the comparison to Dominique. "Jesus, Marlo," Margaret said when I finished. She wasn't one for profanity, so the word hit harder. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was this bad. "I enabled it," I said. "The wine was making me honest. I knew what I was doing. I knew I was buying their affection, their presence, their willingness to pretend we were still a family." "You were grieving," Margaret said firmly. "You lost Robert. You were allowed to make mistakes. For 3 years? At what point does grief become stupidity?" She didn't have an answer for that. We finished the wine in silence, and she stayed until almost midnight, just being there, just being the friend I desperately needed. On day 5, I got an email from a law firm I didn't recognize. Subject line, "Regarding property at 25 and 50 Century Park East." My heart sank before I even opened it. The email was professionally cold. Dashiell and Estelle were formally requesting a 6-month extension on the move-out date, citing California tenant protection laws and claiming they needed adequate time to secure appropriate housing. The letter mentioned that they'd been residing in good faith and had established tenancy rights. I forwarded it to my own attorney, Patricia Chen, at 8 in the morning. She called me back within an hour. "They're trying to use tenant protection laws," Patricia said, her voice tight with anger. "Technically, because you never formalized a lease agreement and they've been living there over a year, they could argue they have certain rights. But Marlo, you own that property outright. You can absolutely evict them. It'll just take a formal legal process. How long? With California's current laws? Could be 3 to 6 months if they fight it. But I doubt they'll fight once they understand what discovery will look like." "Discovery?" If this goes to court, we'll need to document everything. Every payment you made, every bill you covered, every expense. It'll all become public record. Patricia paused. Estelle won't want that. Her entire Instagram persona is built on the illusion that your son is wealthy. Public court records showing the truth? That'll destroy her carefully constructed image. I felt a grim satisfaction at that. File whatever you need to file. I want them out. Consider it done. That same afternoon, my phone rang. Dashiell. I stared at his name on the screen for 3 rings before I answered. Mom. His voice was rough, like he'd been crying or drinking, maybe both. Mom, please, we need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about, I said. My voice sounded cold, even to my own ears. You hired a lawyer. I hired a lawyer. This is a legal matter now. It doesn't have to be. If you'd give us time to figure things out. I gave you 30 days. That was generous. 30 days isn't enough. Do you know how hard it is to find a place in this market? Especially with our budget? Your budget, I interrupted. The budget you should have been living within all along. The budget that reflects what you actually earn, not what you've been pretending to earn. There was a long silence. I heard Estelle's voice in the background, sharp and insistent, but couldn't make out the words. She's pregnant, Dashiell said suddenly. The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat down hard on the nearest chair. What? Estelle's pregnant. 6 weeks. We just found out. His voice took on a pleading quality. Mom, you're going to be a grandmother. Don't you want to? Doesn't that change things? I closed my eyes, felt the manipulation in those words like poison. If she's pregnant, then you need stable housing even more. You need to find a place you can actually afford, a place that's yours, that you're paying for, that you're building for your child. How are we supposed to do that when you've cut us off completely? When you've taken everything? I didn't take anything. I stopped giving. There's a difference. My hand was shaking. I pressed it flat against my thigh. And if Estelle is really pregnant, you need to grow up fast. You need to be a father, a real father, not someone who's financially dependent on his mother while pretending to be something he's not. You're really going to do this, Dashiell said, and his voice had shifted from pleading to bitter. You're really going to throw your own son out on the street while your grandchild... You're not on the street. You have a job. You have income. You just don't have my money anymore. I stood up, needed to move. And using a pregnancy, if it's even real, as emotional blackmail is exactly the kind of manipulation I'm done tolerating. If it's real? You think she's lying? I think you've both lied about plenty. I think you forged my signature on a loan application 3 weeks ago. I think you've been lying to your wife about your income for 2 years. I think you've been lying to me about where my money was going. So yes, Dashiell, I question everything now. He hung up. Just hung up without another word. And I stood there in my kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, wondering if I'd just destroyed my relationship with my only child forever. Wondering if I'd ever meet this grandchild, if there even was one. The next day, I went to the bank, confirmed that all the credit cards were canceled, confirmed that the supplemental deposits had stopped, confirmed that Dashiell had no access to any of my accounts. Tom, my banker, looked worried. Are you sure about this, Mrs. Hollister? Sometimes family situations can be resolved without such drastic... I'm sure, I said firmly. And I need you to flag my accounts. If anyone tries to access them, if anyone tries to use my information for anything, I need to know immediately. Of course, we'll put additional security measures in place. I also called my insurance company and removed Dashiell as an authorized driver on the Ferrari, called the parking garage at the penthouse and revoked his access to my assigned spaces, called the building management and informed them that Dashiell and Estelle were no longer authorized guests and should not be allowed access to any areas outside their own unit. Margaret told me I was being thorough. Patricia told me I was being smart, but I knew what I was really being. I was being someone who finally understood she'd been used. 2 weeks after the dinner, I saw the Instagram post. One of Margaret's daughters followed Estelle and sent me a screenshot, thinking I should know. The post showed Estelle on a bed, not the penthouse, somewhere else, looking ethereal in white, hand on her still flat stomach. The caption made my blood boil. Baby Hollister coming November. So blessed despite challenging times. Family isn't always who you're born to. Sometimes it's who chooses to stand by you. grateful for my husband's strength and my mother's wisdom during this journey. Baby on the way, family first, blessed. The comments were full of congratulations, full of people saying how beautiful she looked, how lucky the baby was, how wonderful this was. And sprinkled throughout were comments asking about the challenging times. Estelle had responded to a few, vaguely mentioning family struggles and toxic dynamics and choosing our peace. She was crafting a narrative, making herself the victim, making me the villain, and her followers were eating it up. I called Patricia immediately. Can she do this? Can she post about me publicly like this? She didn't name you specifically, Patricia said, clearly reading the post as we spoke. It's vague enough that it's not legally actionable. But Marlo, this is good for us. Good? How is this good? Because she's establishing a public record of having other support systems. She's literally posting about her mother's help and her husband's strength. That undercuts any claim that they're dependent on you or that evicting them creates undue hardship. Keep screenshots of everything. This helps our case. I took screenshots, saved them all. And then I did something I'd never done before. I created an Instagram account, not to post anything, just to watch, to see what else Estelle was saying, what narrative she was building. What I found made me sick. Posts going back months showing the Ferrari with captions about Dashiell's success. Posts showing the penthouse with hashtags like homeowner and living the dream. Posts showing designer bags and expensive dinners with captions about working hard and playing hard and blessed life. Every single post was a lie. Every single one was built on my money, my generosity, my desperate need to feel like I still had a family. And the comments from her followers were full of envy and admiration. Women saying they wished they had her life, saying they wished their husbands were as successful as Dashiell, saying they wished they had her style, her grace, her perfect existence. 3 weeks after the dinner, I got another call from Dashiell. This time, I almost didn't answer. But something, curiosity maybe, or that stubborn hope that never quite dies, made me pick up. She left, he said without preamble. His voice was hollow. What? Estelle. She's gone. She went back to France 3 days ago. Filed for divorce yesterday. Her lawyer emailed me this morning. I sat down slowly. Dashiell. She said she can't do this. Can't live like this. Can't raise a baby in poverty. He laughed, but it was bitter and broken. Poverty. Like $140,000 a year is poverty. Like a nice apartment in a good neighborhood is poverty. She literally used that word, Mom. Poverty. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me felt heartbroken for my son. Part of me wondered if the pregnancy had ever been real at all. I'm sorry, I said finally, because I was. Despite everything, I was sorry he was hurting. Are you? His voice turned hard. Because you got what you wanted, right? You got rid of her. You got rid of the gold digger who was only with me for money that wasn't even mine. Dashiell, that's not... She told me something before she left, he interrupted. She said her mother warned her that American self-made women are the worst kind, that they never let anyone forget how hard they worked, how much they sacrificed, that they hold it over everyone's heads forever. The words stung more than they should have. Is that what you think I do? Don't you? His voice cracked. Every conversation we've ever had about money, you've reminded me how you started as a nurse, how you worked your way up, how you and Dad built everything from nothing, like I didn't already know. Like I didn't already feel like a failure every single day because I can't measure up to that. I never wanted you to feel that way, I said, and my own voice was breaking now. I wanted you to feel proud, to feel like you could do anything. Well, I don't. I feel like a 32-year-old child whose wife just left him because he can't afford her lifestyle. I feel like a disappointment who's about to lose his apartment, his mother's apartment, because he can't stand on his own 2 feet. I feel like exactly what Estelle called me in her last email, a child pretending to be a man. Dashiell, the penthouse is yours, the car is yours, everything is yours. I'll be out by the end of the week. I found a place in Culver City, $900 a month for a 1-bedroom. No parking, no view, just what I can actually afford on my actual salary. He paused. I won't contest the eviction. I'll sign whatever your lawyer needs. And Mom, don't call me, don't come by. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not your son who you're financing. I need to figure out if there's anything real underneath all the pretending. Of course there is. You're smart and capable and— No, he said quietly. I'm not. Or maybe I am. But I've never had to be, so I don't know. And I need to find out. Alone. The line went dead. And I sat there in my beautiful house, in my expensive neighborhood, with my millions in the bank and my successful career behind me, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. Margaret came over that night, held me while I cried, told me I'd done the right thing, told me that sometimes love means letting people fall so they can learn to stand up. But it didn't feel right. It felt like I'd lost everything that mattered while keeping everything that didn't. 4 weeks after the dinner, I was sitting in my study reviewing quarterly reports from my investment portfolio when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Margaret was at a conference in San Diego. My cleaning service wasn't scheduled until Thursday. For a brief, irrational moment, I hoped it might be Dashiell, that he'd changed his mind about the space he needed, that we could start to rebuild something, anything. It wasn't Dashiell. The woman at my door was in her early 60s, elegant in the way that only European women seem to manage effortlessly. Perfectly cut gray hair, subtle makeup, a Hermès scarf tied just so. She looked like she'd stepped out of a French fashion magazine, and I knew who she was before she even opened her mouth. "Mrs. Hollister," she said, her accent making my name sound almost musical. "I am Dominique Duchamp. I believe we should talk." I stood there for a moment, genuinely shocked. "How did you get my address?" "My daughter is many things, but disorganized is not one of them. She keeps excellent records." Dominique's smile was thin. "May I come in? This is not a conversation for doorsteps." Every instinct told me to say no, to close the door in her face. This was the woman my son had compared me to. The woman whose wisdom Estelle had publicly praised while painting me as toxic. But curiosity, and maybe something darker, something that wanted to see who this person really was, made me step aside. 5 minutes, I said. She walked into my foyer with the confidence of someone who'd spent her life in beautiful homes. I watched her take in the artwork, the furniture, the view through to the living room. She nodded slightly, as if approving. We sat in the living room. I didn't offer coffee or tea. This wasn't a social call. "I came to apologize," Dominique said, and that shocked me more than her appearance at my door. "Apologize? For my daughter, for what she did to your son, to you, to your family." Dominique folded her hands in her lap, and I noticed they were shaking slightly. "I raised her wrong, Mrs. Hollister. I taught her the wrong things, and I am here because someone must acknowledge that, and Estelle never will." I didn't know what to say. Didn't trust this. Why now? Why here? Because 3 days ago, my daughter came home to Nice and told me everything. Everything. Dominique's eyes met mine, and I saw genuine pain there. She told me how your son was, how do you say, financially supported by you. She told me about the car, the apartment, all of it. And she laughed, Mrs. Hollister. She laughed and said she was well rid of him, that she'd wasted 2 years on a man who couldn't even afford her properly. The words hit me like a slap, hearing it said so bluntly, so callously. "And I realized," Dominique continued, her voice softer now, "that I created this. When my husband lost everything, our home, our business, our position, I became bitter. I taught Estelle that a woman's value is in who she marries, what she can extract. I taught her that working is shameful, that career is masculine, that a woman of quality should be kept like a pet." She closed her eyes briefly. "I taught her to be exactly what she became. And now I see what that teaching has done." I felt something in my chest loosen slightly. Not forgiveness, I wasn't ready for that, but recognition. This woman understood something about her daughter that I was still learning about my son. "Estelle is not pregnant," Dominique said quietly. "She lied about that. She thought it would make your son, make you, more willing to continue the financial support. When it did not work, when you called what you said was a manipulation, she knew the game was over." "I suspected," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but hearing it confirmed still hurt, still made me angry at how far they'd been willing to go. "She is home now, living with me in my small apartment, filing for divorce, telling everyone that your son deceived her, that he pretended to have money he did not have. Dominique's jaw tightened. She is making herself the victim, as she always does. And I cannot watch it anymore without at least telling you the truth, without at least acknowledging what my daughter is. Why are you telling me this? I asked. What do you want? Want? Dominique looked genuinely surprised. I want nothing, Mrs. Hollister. I came because I read the things Estelle posted online. I saw how she spoke about you, about toxic family, and choosing peace. And I knew that you were probably sitting here believing those things, believing that you were the villain in this story. She leaned forward slightly, and I saw tears in her eyes. You are not the villain. You are the woman who loved her son enough to help him, and then loved him enough to stop helping when it became harmful. You are the woman who worked for everything she has, who built something real, who gave generously until that generosity was exploited. Dominique's voice shook. I am the villain, Mrs. Hollister. I am the one who raised a daughter to see people as resources, and I came to tell you that I see it now. I see what I have done, and I am so sorry. We sat in silence for a long moment. I felt tears on my own cheeks and didn't remember starting to cry. My husband was a good man, Dominique said finally. He worked hard. He built a business. And when he lost it all to fraud, to criminals who stole everything, I blamed him. I blamed him for trusting the wrong people, for being too generous with the wrong partners, for working when he should have been protecting what we had. She shook her head. I was wrong. He was brave. He tried. He built something. And I taught our daughter that his failure was shameful, that work itself was shameful, that only the appearance of wealth mattered, not how it was earned. What will you do now? I asked. I do not know. Try to teach her differently, perhaps, though I think it is too late. Watch her divorce your son and move on to the next target, because that is what I have made her. Dominique stood up. But I wanted you to know the truth. I wanted you to know that the comparison your son made, it was wrong. You are twice the woman I ever was, Mrs. Hollister. 10 times, 100 times. You built something real. I only built a beautiful illusion that collapsed the moment someone looked too closely. She moved toward the door. I followed, still processing everything she'd said. Mrs. Hollister, Dominique said as she stepped outside, your son asked you not to contact him. But if I may suggest, give him time, but not too much time. He is learning a hard lesson. But he is learning. And when he is ready, he will need his mother. The real you. Not the bank account. Not the safety net. The woman who knows what it means to build something from nothing. She walked to a modest rental car parked in my driveway, so different from the luxury I'd expected, and drove away. I closed the door and leaned against it, my mind racing. Everything I'd believed about Dominique was wrong. Everything Estelle had presented was calculated, and somewhere in Culver City, my son was living in a $900 apartment trying to figure out who he was. For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift inside me. Not hope, exactly, but possibility. 2 months after the dinner, I drove to Culver City. I'd promised myself I'd give Dashiell space. I'd promised myself I wouldn't interfere, wouldn't try to fix things, wouldn't fall back into old patterns. But Dominique's visit had changed something in me, made me realize that space didn't have to mean absence, that loving someone didn't mean abandoning them to prove a point. The apartment building was nothing like the penthouse. It was a 3-story walk-up from the 1970s, pale yellow stucco that had seen better days. The address was Unit 2B. I climbed the exterior stairs, my heart pounding harder with each step. I didn't know if he'd even let me in. Didn't know if he'd slammed the door in my face. I knocked, waited, heard movement inside, then silence. He was looking through the peephole, deciding. The door opened. Dashiell stood there in jeans and a t-shirt I'd never seen before. Something old and worn, not the designer clothes that had filled his closet at the penthouse. He looked thinner, tired, but there was something different in his eyes, something I couldn't quite name. Mom, he said quietly, I know you said not to come, but my voice caught. I needed to see you. I needed to know you were okay. He stepped aside, let me in. The apartment was small, tiny really. One room that served as bedroom and living room, with a kitchenette in one corner and a bathroom I could glimpse through a half-open door. But it was clean, organized. There were law books stacked on a small desk by the window, a laptop open with what looked like case files, a coffee maker that was clearly well used. "It's not much," Dashiell said, and I heard defensiveness in his voice. "It's yours," I said. "That's more than the penthouse ever was." He looked at me for a long moment, then gestured to a second-hand couch, the only real furniture besides the bed and desk. We sat down, careful to maintain distance between us. "Estelle filed for divorce," he said finally. "I assume you know." "I know. Her mother came to see me." That got his attention. "Dominique? Came to you?" She apologized, for Estelle, for what she'd taught her, for— I paused, trying to find the right words, "for being the woman you compared me to, when apparently she wishes she'd been more like me." Dashiell's face crumpled, just for a second, but I saw it, saw the shame and regret wash over him before he got himself under control. "I've been wanting to call you," he said, his voice rough. "Every day for 2 months I've picked up the phone and then put it back down, because I didn't know what to say, how to explain." He stopped, started again. "I said something unforgivable to you. In your own house, and I don't know how to take it back." "You can't take it back," I said, and I saw him flinch. "But Dashiell, I don't need you to take it back. I need you to understand why you said it. I need you to understand what was really happening in that moment." I was defending her. I was trying to— "You were drowning," I interrupted gently. "You were drowning in lies you'd been telling, and she was the only one who didn't know the truth yet, and you were terrified of losing her. So you lashed out at the person you knew would still be there after. Me." Tears were streaming down his face now. It was still unforgivable. Maybe, but I wasn't perfect either. I enabled everything. I made it so easy for you to lie that you started believing your own lies. I took a deep breath. "Your father and I, we worked so hard when you were growing up. We were never home, and I carried that guilt every single day. When Dad died, I thought I could make up for it. Thought I could give you everything we'd missed giving you as a child. But you can't make up for lost time with money. You can't buy back the years we lost." "I don't blame you for that," Dashiell said quickly. "I never blamed you and Dad for working. I was proud of what you built, both of you. But you felt inadequate compared to it. Compared to us, it wasn't a question. I'd had 2 months to think about this, to really examine what had gone wrong. And instead of talking about it, instead of admitting you were struggling, you let me throw money at the problem. We both pretended that was helping when really it was just making everything worse." He nodded, unable to speak. "I got a call from Margaret last week," I said. "She said she'd run into someone from your firm at a conference. They mentioned you've been taking on extra cases, working late, really applying yourself." "I don't have a choice anymore," Dashiell said. But there was something in his voice that wasn't quite bitterness. "I have to pay rent, have to buy groceries, have to actually be an adult for the first time in my life. And how does it feel?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Terrifying, exhausting, but—" He looked around the small apartment. "Also real. This place is mine because I pay for it every month. The food in that refrigerator is there because I bought it with money I earned. And I'm starting to realize that nothing I had before felt like mine because it wasn't. It was all borrowed, all temporary, all dependent on your generosity or Estelle's willingness to stay as long as she thought I had money. Your father used to say that the things you work for are the only things that really belong to you," I said softly. "Everything else is just borrowed." I wish I'd listened to him more. Dashiell's voice broke. "I wish I'd listened to both of you instead of just taking what you offered and asking for more." We sat in silence. I looked around the small apartment again, really seeing it this time. There was a photo on the desk, the only personal decoration I could see. Robert, Dashiell, and me at Dashiell's law school graduation. We looked happy. We'd been happy. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," Dashiell said suddenly. "I know I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know. I'm trying. I'm actually trying to be the person Dad would have been proud of. The person you raised me to be before I got lost in all the bullshit." "I know you are," I said. "And Dashiell, I was never not proud of you. I was disappointed in the choices you made. I was hurt by what you said, but I was never not proud that you're my son." He broke then. Really broke. Leaned forward with his head in his hands and sobbed in a way I hadn't seen since his father's funeral. And I did what I'd wanted to do since I walked through that door. I pulled him into my arms and held him while he cried. I loved her, he said between sobs. I really loved her, Mom. Or I thought I did. And finding out it was all, that she never— I know, I whispered. I know it hurts. She sent me an email last week from France. Said she'd met someone, a businessman. Real money this time, she said. Like that's what matters. Like that's all that ever mattered. I felt rage flash through me on my son's behalf. Rage at Estelle for being so callous. Rage at Dominique for raising her that way. Rage at myself for not protecting him better, even though I knew that wasn't fair or rational. She wasn't capable of loving you the way you deserved to be loved, I said firmly. That's not your failure, that's hers. But I wasn't who I pretended to be either. I lied to her about everything. You did, and that was wrong. But Dashiell, she never asked questions. She never wanted to know the real you. She wanted the fantasy. And the moment the fantasy cracked, she left. That tells you everything you need to know about what that marriage really was. He pulled back, wiping his face with his hands. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry for everything. For what I said. For what I did. For the loan application. For all of it. I know you are. I reached out and touched his face, the way I used to when he was small. And I forgive you. But more importantly, you need to forgive yourself. You need to take what you've learned from this and build something better. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You're my son. And Robert's son. You have strength you haven't even discovered yet. I smiled, feeling tears on my own cheeks. You just needed to hit bottom to find it. Is this bottom? He laughed, but it was watery. A $900 apartment in Culver City? This isn't bottom. This is foundation. This is where you start building something real. We talked for another hour. Really talked, in a way we hadn't in years. He told me about the cases he was working on, the client he'd just landed on his own merit. Told me about the senior partner who'd noticed his recent work ethic and had mentioned the possibility of a better position. Told me about the cooking classes he'd started taking at the community center because he couldn't afford to eat out anymore and had discovered he actually enjoyed learning to prepare food. I made chicken parmesan last week, he said, and there was genuine pride in his voice. From scratch. It was pretty good. Your father loved chicken parmesan, I said. I never told you this, but that's what we ate on our first date. A tiny Italian place near the hospital where we both worked. $9 for the dinner special. I didn't know that. There's a lot you don't know about how we started, about what it was really like before the success. I stood up, knowing I needed to leave soon, knowing I needed to let him continue this journey on his own terms. But maybe we could have dinner sometime, and I could tell you some of those stories. I'd like that. He stood too. But Mom, can we do it here? Let me cook for you. Let me show you what I've learned. I felt something warm spread through my chest. Pride. Real pride, not the fake pride I'd felt watching him drive a car I'd bought or live in a home I'd paid for. This was pride in seeing him actually try, actually work, actually become someone real. I would love that, I said. At the door, he hugged me. A real hug, not the perfunctory ones we'd been exchanging for years. Thank you for coming, he said. Thank you for not giving up on me completely. I'm your mother, I said simply. I couldn't give up on you if I tried. I can cut off your credit cards, I can take back the car, I can evict you from the penthouse, but I can't stop being your mother. I can't stop loving you. Even when you break my heart. I won't break it again, he said. I promise. You probably will, I said honestly. That's what families do. We hurt each other sometimes, but we also forgive each other. We also rebuild, and we also love each other through the hurt. I drove home through Los Angeles traffic, and for the first time in months, I felt something like peace. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Dashiell had a long way to go. We had a long way to go, but at least we were finally on the right path. When I got home, I went to the garage, found the boxes I'd packed with photos and mementos, brought them back inside. Put the wedding photo back on the mantel, not to honor the marriage that had failed, but to remember that even mistakes are part of our story. Put the baby shoes back in their shadow box. Put the Mother's Day card back in my desk drawer. These were pieces of my life, pieces of my son's life, and hiding them didn't change what had happened, didn't erase the pain, but it also didn't honor the love that had existed alongside the mistakes. Margaret called that evening. How did it go? Better than I expected, I said. He's different. He's struggling, but he's different. Good different? Real different, I said. Finally. 6 months after the dinner that changed everything, I stood in Dashiell's apartment again. But this time, I wasn't alone. Margaret was with me, and so was Patricia, my attorney who'd become something more like a friend through all of this. We'd been invited for what Dashiell called a proper dinner party. His first attempt at hosting since the divorce was finalized. The apartment looked different. He'd added furniture, nothing expensive, mostly second-hand pieces from estate sales and thrift stores, but chosen with care. A real dining table that could seat 4. Artwork on the walls that he'd told me he'd bought from a student exhibition at UCLA. Plants on the windowsill that were actually alive and thriving. It looked like a home. Not a luxurious home, but a real one. One that reflected an actual person living an actual life. "Welcome," Dashiell said, opening the door with a genuine smile. He was wearing an apron that said, "Kiss the Cook," in faded letters, something he'd clearly found at a thrift store and wore ironically. But his face was bright, alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. The smell coming from the kitchen made my mouth water. "What are you making?" "Coq au vin. I've been practicing for 2 weeks." He laughed. "Burned it 3 times before I got it right. But I think tonight's version is actually edible." We sat down at his little table, and he served us himself. The food was good, genuinely good. Not restaurant quality, but made with care and attention. Made with pride. "This is delicious," Margaret said, and she meant it. "Dashiell, I'm impressed." "Thanks. I figured if I was going to survive on my actual salary, I needed to learn to cook. Eating out every night isn't an option anymore." He took a bite of his own food. "Turns out I actually enjoy it. Who knew?" "Your father enjoyed cooking," I said. "He never had time for it, but on the rare Sunday mornings when he wasn't on call, he'd make these elaborate breakfasts. Crepes, omelets, the works." "I remember that," Dashiell said softly. "I'd forgotten, but I remember. He'd let me crack the eggs even though I'd get shell everywhere. We talked through dinner about normal things. Patricia's daughter's college applications. Margaret's upcoming trip to a medical conference in Boston. Dashiell's new position at his firm. He'd been promoted to senior associate 3 weeks ago with a salary bump to $175,000. Not enough to live the lifestyle Estelle had wanted, but more than enough to live comfortably and start building real savings. "I've been putting 20% into retirement," he told me, and I heard the pride in his voice. "And I'm saving for a down payment on a real place. Nothing huge, but something that's actually mine. My loan officer said maybe another year, and I'll have enough." "That's wonderful," I said, and meant it completely. After dinner, after Margaret and Patricia had left with warm hugs and promises to do this again soon, Dashiell and I cleaned up together. I washed, he dried, and it felt comfortable, easy, like we'd finally found our way back to something real. "I heard from Estelle last month," he said, as he put away the last plate. I tensed slightly. "Oh?" "She's engaged. To some tech investor in Paris. They're getting married in the spring at some chateau." He smiled, but it was peaceful, not bitter. "She sent me an invitation. Can you believe that?" "Are you going?" "God, no. But I did send back the RSVP card with congratulations written on it. Seemed like the mature thing to do." He hung up the dish towel. "I hope she's happy. I really do. I hope she found whatever she was looking for. But Mom, I'm glad it's not with me. I'm glad I get to figure out who I really am without trying to live up to some fantasy version she needed me to be." "That's very mature of you," I said. "I've had a lot of therapy," he admitted. "Started going about a month after you came to visit that first time. Figured if I was going to rebuild my life, I should probably deal with the psychological stuff too. Why I needed to pretend. Why I let you enable me. Why I was so afraid of failing that I never actually tried to succeed. I'm proud of you," I said, "for doing that work. I'm proud of me too." He grinned. "That's new. Being proud of myself for things I've actually done instead of things I've just acquired." We moved to the couch, and he pulled out his phone. "I want to show you something." He opened his photos and turned the screen toward me. It was a picture of a small house, a craftsman bungalow, probably built in the 1920s, with a front porch and a little yard. I'm putting an offer in next week. It needs work, but it's in a good neighborhood in Mar Vista. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, 900 square feet. It's perfect. I looked at the photo and felt tears prick my eyes. It's beautiful. It's mine. Well, it will be mine. 30 years of mortgage payments mine, but still, mine. He put the phone down. And Mom, I want you to know, when I move in, you're welcome anytime. But I'm not asking you to help with the down payment. I'm not asking you to co-sign. I'm not asking you for anything except to be happy for me. I am happy for you. So, so happy. I know we can't get back the time we lost, he said quietly. I know I can't undo what I said to you, or how I treated you, or the choices I made, but I want you in my life, the real life I'm building now. Not as a bank account or a safety net, but as my mom. That's all I ever wanted to be, I said. We sat together in comfortable silence for a while. Then Dashiell said, I've been thinking about Dad a lot lately, about what he would think of all this. He'd be proud of you, I said firmly. Not because you're successful, or making money, or living in a nice place. He'd be proud because you're doing the hard work, because you're being honest, because you're building something real. Do you think he'd be disappointed that it took me so long, that I had to fall so far first? I think he'd understand. Your father made mistakes too. We all do. I took Dashiell's hand. But it's not about how fast you learn. It's about whether you learn at all. And you're learning. As I drove home that night, I thought about everything that had happened, the pain of that dinner, the loneliness of the weeks after, the surprise of Dominique's visit, the tentative rebuilding with Dashiell. All of it had been necessary. All of it had brought us to this moment where my son was finally becoming the man he was meant to be. My phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Dashiell. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for everything. Love you, Mom. I typed back, love you too. Always have, always will. When I got home, I didn't feel the emptiness that had haunted me for months. The house was quiet, but it wasn't lonely. I poured myself a glass of wine. The good stuff. The bottle Robert and I had been saving for a special occasion that never came before he died. I took it out to the back patio and sat under the stars. We did it, I said to the night sky, to Robert, to whoever was listening. He's going to be okay. We raised a good man. It just took him a while to figure out how to be that man. The next morning, I did something I'd been thinking about for weeks. I called the foundation that managed Robert's charitable donations and set up a new scholarship. Full ride to nursing school for students from low-income backgrounds who were working full-time while trying to get their degrees. Just like I'd done 35 years ago. What should we call it? The foundation director asked. The Robert and Marlo Hollister Second Chances Scholarship, I said. Because everyone deserves a chance to build something real. And sometimes, everyone needs a second chance to get it right. 3 weeks later, I attended the small housewarming party Dashiell threw in his new bungalow. It was full of his colleagues from work, a few neighbors he'd already met, and Margaret with her family. No one from his old life. No one who'd known him when he was pretending to be someone else. I brought him a gift, a set of good kitchen knives and a cookbook that had been Robert's favorite. Dad's cookbook? Dashiell asked, his voice thick with emotion. He'd want you to have it. He'd want you to cook from it in your own kitchen, in your own home. I hugged him tight. I'm so proud of you. Not for the house or the promotion or any of it. I'm proud of you for becoming real. I learned from the best, he said. And standing there in his small, perfect home, surrounded by people who knew and liked him for who he actually was, I finally felt the weight I'd been carrying for 3 years lift. Robert was gone. The marriage to Estelle had failed. The money I'd spent couldn't be recovered. But my son was real again. My son was whole again. And that was worth everything.